Nostalrius is dead. The nostalgia train has derailed, killing all on board. What is Nostalrius, you ask? Well, Nostalrius was a private World of Warcraft server that had become quite popular recently, running the so-called vanilla version of World of Warcraft. The original, actually not the original version of World of Warcraft, the 1.12 patch version of World of Warcraft before Blizzard added any expansions to the game. This is like all of the original content from when your maximum level could be level 60. Why they were shut down? Well, Blizzard sent them a cease-and-desist letter. Why am I talking about this? It's because I really loved that version of World of Warcraft. I actually did play quite a bit of vanilla on a different server called Kronos. And the reason I'm not playing it right now and having some of that footage is because I don't want to get the video taken down. Blizzard has spent the last year taking videos down that have footage of the older version of the game, and I want this video to exist. I know I haven't talked that much about games on this channel recently, but I think there is still a lot of fertile soil for people who aren't necessarily gamers, or who are gamers but don't necessarily play World of Warcraft. And there are a couple things I want to talk about a little bit with IP. I know we've talked a lot about IP on this particular channel. I want to talk a little bit about game design as well. So the first one is the intellectual property thing. Blizzard sent a cease and desist letter to the people who run Nostalrius, telling them that they needed to shut their server down or they would sue them. And they complied. They shut the server down, and off went everybody's characters and all their hard work. The last year that people had spent basically getting up to AQ 40 level. They were going to come out with AQ 40 soon, which is the third 40-man raid that was released at level 60 and was quite challenging at the time. So yeah, they got rid of that, and people were very upset because not just because they put in an investment into this, but the company that had created this game that they like had then gone and killed the only version of it that they were really interested in playing. Does Blizzard have a right to do this? If you're thinking strictly legally, then yes. We've had a lot of great discussions on this channel about intellectual property rights, not just in terms of legality, like what the legality should be, but extra legal ways of thinking about them. And I prefer to think of them extra legally. And I don't mean like illegally, but just not in terms of this legal box. Like people say, well, this is the law. Well, the law isn't necessarily moral. I care about what's moral, and I care about like what's right and how things should be, not necessarily how they are. Yes, the law basically puts the power in the hands of this company called Blizzard to then control their IP. Now, what is my official position on IP? Well, the position I've been trying to develop and I've been thinking about and trying to apply my principles to is as an artist, as a creator, I believe I own my creations. I own my books that I've written. And if other people are going to write sequels to those books, I don't really want that, because I want to have control over that, and I don't want somebody leeching off any kind of effort that I put marketing my material. So if somebody decided to write a sequel to Muramasa Blood Drinker, like Muramasa Forged in Fire or something, right? Well, I wouldn't want that. The question for me is, how do we enforce intellectual property? How do we enforce like artistic integrity and property? And I'm kind of in favor of social enforcement. Social enforcement would basically mean people know that that's not my book, even if it's playing off of my characters, and therefore they don't buy it. That the market itself, the people who are fans of whatever work or whatever artist, they're not going to go and buy whatever product is kind of trying to play on that artist's property and isn't, of course, giving them money or credit where credit's due. That's my hope. I think that's kind of not realistic right now because we have the law that people are so used to dealing with. And I think that the legal system has actually produced some things that are really good, even though overall I don't really prefer it. And one of the ways that it can produce things that are actually quite good is actually World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is owned by a company. It's owned by Blizzard. And the problem with that is that we have to ask the question, who is Blizzard? Right, Blizzard is a collection of people, and that collection of people is changing all the time. Corporations are like a made-up thing. They're a fictional identity. They act like a person. They own things like people. But who is actually part of that corporation can change, and what Blizzard is now may contain few or no employees from when it was creating World of Warcraft. So it's really hard to say that corporations can be the artists that own things, right? But the reason that kind of exists is because the law assigns to the corporation the property. That can actually be a good thing, because for Blizzard to find it profitable to continually update and to design a really, really thorough, super complex game, coordinate the efforts of hundreds of people to create a product, it has to have some ownership that is independent of those people in order to direct the flow of where things are going. Every single person who contributes to a project that big can't have the same stake as every other person. It just won't work. The same thing happens in movies, right? Star Wars is George Lucas's like mental creation, but there's a whole lot of people that contributed to Star Wars, which is why the ownership of Star Wars is difficult to even determine. I think that like there are certain essential elements in any corporate work that once you remove like a particular artistic direction, I think in George Lucas's case in Star Wars, you lose part of the authenticity of that product, and that's when I think the social enforcement should apply. Like we should really not want to watch Star Wars when George Lucas, the guy who invented it, has been sort of kicked out of his own creation. I don't think that and then there's lots of people who contributed. If they kick John Williams out, we might say like, there's no George Lucas, there's no John Williams, who's in it, right? But that's sort of where my principles have led me to sort of wish how things are. But we're dealing with legalities. Blizzard has the legal right to tell Nostalrius to shut down. What's interesting about Vanilla WoW is you can't legally play Vanilla WoW. There's no legal way to play the version of the game you played in 2006. There's a legal way to play Warcraft Orcs and Humans from 1994. You just put your CD in the drive, you load up the software, and bam, you have Warcraft Orcs and Humans. You could play it on DOSBox, man. It's the same as it was. That license is essentially eternal as long as you own the disc. But built into sort of the license agreement of World of Warcraft is this idea that you are agreeing to only play the game on Blizzard's servers, which means if they choose to stop having those servers that offer this particular game that you bought, like I actually have my original box, here's my original Warcraft box, pretty cool, and got like it was really cool box art, even though it really wasn't from the game. Just because I have this box doesn't mean I can play the software, even though I paid like $60 for the software back in 2005 or something. That doesn't mean I get to keep using the software, because built into that license agreement is this idea that you'll only access it the way that we want you to access it. So essentially, Nostalrius is providing a way for people to play a game that they may own. They may own the license to the original World of Warcraft game, but they have no way to actually access the content that they've paid money for. And of course, Blizzard has always charged a subscription that helps pay for the servers and updated content, although that's kind of laughable in the current state of World of Warcraft. There hasn't been an update in like a year or something, which is awful, and there's probably not going to be another one until Legion drops. And the last expansion was bad anyway, but anyway. So that's the niche that they're trying to fill. The question that you have to ask, let's talk a little bit about game design and leave the IP law stuff behind. Like, it kind of sucks that there's no way that people can play this particular version of the software, and Blizzard has chosen to kind of swat that fly. I do, by the way, play Vanilla WoW. I don't play it on Nostalrius, and one of the reasons I kind of didn't want to play it on Nostalrius is that it was being very overground. It was very popular. They had like 1 million accounts or something, which is a lot, like 800 and some odd 1,000 accounts, just a huge number. And I was like, man, that's going to get shut down because it's going way too overground. So I play on Chronos, and I don't really play that much anymore. I just get on and level from time to time. But it's a big enough thing that Blizzard saw it as potential negative economic impact for them, so they got rid of it. Now, yes. So let me get on this slight business tangent. If you have 800,000 people wanting to use your software, would you want to provide for them a way to do it, including charging $15 a month to them? I think most people would say, yeah, that would probably be a worthwhile investment. Get 1 million people to use this version of the software. We don't even have to deal with it anymore. Like, it's over there, right? We already made it. The game client already exists. The server scripting may already exist. It may still exist. They may have backups of it somewhere. They may have to do no work to provide this particular server. But they're not. Well, I think the question is, why aren't they? Why aren't they serving this part of the market? And I think the answer is because this whole thing makes the current version of WoW look really bad. Current version of WoW went from 10 million subs, like at the end of 2014, I think, when I re-upped and started playing again, back down to like 5 million subs, and Blizzard said, we're no longer going to even publish the amount of subscribers we have for investors or anyone else, which basically said, the game is so in the crapper that we are refusing to admit how bad. We're refusing to release any data on how bad it actually is. So if you are offering a vanilla server, and all of a sudden it's more popular or has a significant enough popularity that it implies a judgment on your current product, that can make you look bad for your current development cycle. I understand that. However, that's also a learning opportunity. Why do people preferring this old content more than the new content? That's what I want to get to when I talk about game design. Why are people willing to go and play on a private server that they know could get shut down at any time Blizzard feels like it? Why are they going and playing on that private server instead of paying us to play on this new shiny server with these updated graphics and all this other kind of stuff? I don't know. Some other justifications Blizzard has given about they kill Nostalrius streams, they kill vanilla videos, of which I have a couple, but they haven't really killed those yet. But I don't want this one to get killed. They're like, we don't want someone to log into the game and see 10-year-old graphics and think that's what the game is, or to watch a video and not log into the game, but watch a video, watch a stream and say, oh, well, that's what World of Warcraft looks like. Except that is kind of what it looks like. They during Cataclysm, which happened a couple of years ago, and that was like their 4th expansion, I think, they erased the original vanilla world and they replaced it with this Cataclysm world. So the graphics in that are still kind of old, though. So if you're seeing live WoW in the old world, it doesn't look that great. Maybe it looks better than vanilla. But that goes back to my original point. There's no way to actually play vanilla. Not just, they could play the vanilla content and then there's more expansions. It's like, no, the original version of World of Warcraft, that original 2-continent, Kalimdor, Old Kingdom, or Eastern Kingdoms, that doesn't exist. There's no way to legally access those quests, that content, that landscape, those monsters, that loot. There's no legal way to do it. Okay? And they're not providing a legal way to do it, which I think could make them money. And I think they do it because that casts a lot of judgment. There's a lot of ego crushing that has to happen when you have a lot of people that are choosing to do something that's not the thing that you're currently trying to promote. So let me talk about game design. I know I'm going on, and this is a long-winded video, but let's talk about game design a little bit. World of Warcraft is a game that I'll tell you right now, like if I had started this channel back in 2005 or 2006, this would be a World of Warcraft channel. That was my hobby. That was basically it's not the only game I played, but because I've played lots of other games, including Elder Scrolls and stuff like that. I really like RPGs. But it's the game that I definitely played the most heavy, and it was the game that had the biggest impact on my life and on my thoughts, as far as what I did in my free time. I was a musician by profession. I was I did World of Warcraft by night, right? That's kind of how it was. I met some amazing friends playing World of Warcraft. I met people I'm still friends with. I've met people that have been in family weddings through World of Warcraft. I've met friends that I've made business connections with, not just personal connections, friends that I've ended up spending time with in real life, and who've become a more ingrained part of my life than the people who were physically near me at the time, right? The people who I went to school with or worked with and that kind of stuff. So World of Warcraft's had a big impact, but I look back and all of those friends I made basically in vanilla through a little bit the 3rd expansion. Second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King. Okay. Why was that the case? Well, it has to do with the design of the game. The big mistake Blizzard has made, and what they're kind of being faced with when they see like people choosing older versions of the game versus newer ones, it's like, the big mistake they make is thinking that you're going to improve a game, that you're going to progress a game by adding features. This is a fundamental mistake because adding features does not improve gameplay experiences necessarily. In fact, I think World of Warcraft is an excellent argument for how it can destroy aspects of gameplay that are vital to how the game feels and plays and works. So some of the features that they've added over the years, they've added insta queues, or they've added dungeon queues where you open up an interface and you queue and it automatically queues you into people. Cross-server battlegrounds, where you're basically doing PvP against people that aren't on your server, which moved all the way into cross-server everything. In Warlords of Draenor, everything was cross-server, so every single person you met, you probably had never seen in your life and you never meet again. There was not like an isolated server that they had. And some other features, and the whole idea of that was to spread population out, increase performance, and have more people, constantly encountering people, but it works out. I think it works the opposite way. Battleground PvP queues anywhere. That's a feature they've added. Flying mounts is a feature they added. Raid Finder, Dungeon Finder. I think I mentioned Dungeon Finder. They added Raid Finder, garrisons, garrison table missions. Like, they added all these features, and they've added even more features than I can even think of, right? And the belief is, well, we're improving the game by we're adding these features, and we're making these like quality of life changes to improve the game. But the reality is that the reason the old game feels better is it doesn't have those improvements. It doesn't have these features in it. It's just the game, and absent those features has a significant impact on the way players experience the game in a way that I think Blizzard does not take into account. They're thinking very two-dimensionally about game design. They're thinking about what do people want? What is going to make people happy rather than what's going to create a satisfying experience. And I think you can make a parallel here when you are doing writing or you're doing any kind of other creative endeavor. If you write a book where there's no tension, where all the lovable characters get along and good things happen to them, and then you have the end of the book, no one's going to finish reading it. No one's going to like it. Why? People are compelled by conflict. The compelling part of any experience is the conflict. It's the tension. It's the difficulty in achieving whatever the goal. Whether you're writing a story or you are creating a game, the tension in the game is what is going to really make the game compelling. So things that are compelling and satisfying, and therefore satisfying to me, are not necessarily ones that make you feel happy, right? It's usually ones that make you feel anxious and then relieve that anxiety on some level. You have a dissonant chord and then you have the resolution to the tonic. So the original World of Warcraft, it actually had a lot of features that EverQuest players thought were like way too convenient. It had flight paths, so you could pay a person and they would take you on a griffin to the town you wanted to go. And people were like, man, it's so casual friendly. In EverQuest, you have to walk everywhere, right? Boats that came really often, a quest log was considered like this casual thing. Now we consider it like pretty standard feature. But what World of Warcraft lacked was there was no dungeon finder. Right? If you wanted to do a dungeon, you had to find 4 other people to do a dungeon with you, and you had to find 4 other people that fulfilled specific roles for you to be able to be successful in that dungeon. You had to have somebody who could tank, which is like absorb all the damage and mitigate it, and somebody who could heal, which would be to take people who are damaged and top their life off, and that's how you got through dungeons. Well, the effort that you spent finding that group, because it was a time commitment, also motivated you to really make sure that group succeeded, because you didn't want to have to go find another group, to really make sure that the people you invited to that group were quality individuals that were not going to leave the group halfway through, that weren't going to suck, all this sort of stuff. So you were actively out in the world trying to find individuals that you could play this difficult content with. And because there was no group finder tool that just like threw you in a group with 5 people and sent you to the dungeon, you had to actually walk to the dungeon, all that kind of stuff. You created a friends list. You made friends. You're like, okay, this person is a tank. I want them to be my friend. I put them on my friends list. We talk. I invest in this relationship because I need him. I need this person so that I can get further on in the game, so I can get the items I need, so I can complete this content. I need this person. And then it just scales up from there. Till eventually you have a guild, and you have a guild organization, because you have to have way more than 40 people to have a 40-person raid to do these big raids. Now you have to do these other things that are actually completely external to the design of the game. You have to create a website. You have to create forums so that everybody can communicate, so that everybody can organize themselves into a cohesive unit that can go off and do this content. All these things that are completely outside of the game design are what ended up making the game good. Because by me investing in that social relationship with that person who was a tank that I needed to complete the content, I created a friendship. That friendship in turn made the game experience better, because I had someone that I could then rely on to do difficult, satisfying, compelling things. In turn, the large guild experience, you created friends, you created cliques, and that whole thing, which was not, the whole like guild website thing, that wasn't put in the game. That players had to invent what was necessary to complete the content. Blizzard provided a game, or provided a world, really. I'll link a couple other conversations about this, I think. But I think I watched one from Asmongold, who's a YouTube World of Warcraft guy. And he said, like, the vanilla version of WoW was a fantasy world simulator. It wasn't a game. And I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. So they just, Blizzard provided the world. They provided the content. They provided the monsters, the bosses. And players had to figure out how to do that. And what that created was that social matrix. The challenge of doing it created a game, an emergent part of the game that has since been lost. As soon as you start having dungeon queues, and I've covered this in other videos, but as soon as you start having dungeon queues, you're like, well, that's easier. Now people don't have to spend an hour trying to find 5 other people or 4 other people to do a dungeon. We queue them in, 10 minutes later, they're in the dungeon, they're doing it, right? You're like, oh, well, that's so convenient. But you didn't vet any of those people. So early on when that came out, it came out at this period where everybody had really good gear, so you really didn't need to vet people in your little dungeon groups that well. They were initially successful. The next expansion came out, Cataclysm, and all of a sudden people were not successful in their dungeon groups. And there was a lot of complaints about it, so they nerfed the difficulty of the dungeons. Like, I guess we tuned them too hard. Well, the truth was they didn't actually tune the dungeons to be more difficult than was necessary originally. But because of the feature that they added, the quality of the player base decreased. People did not have to invest in being good so that they could have connections with people and continue to group with them. People also didn't have to invest in friendships, so you just had a decay in that. And then also people didn't have to be nice to each other. You could be a total jerk. You got out of that queue and you'd queue up again and see 5 other people that you've never seen before in your life and you would never talk to again afterwards. That weren't even from your server. So it completely eliminated the social necessity of that, which in turn had a reflexive effect. You start making the content for the players that exist rather than their quality rising to the challenge, so to speak. Players organize themselves according to whatever challenges are there. And if you have to lower the challenge because the players have forgotten how to do that, then that in turn makes the game easier, not quite as good. So the whole point about design is really that what you think you're adding to the game to make it more accessible, make it better, make it more convenient, make it easier to get to the content, and can have effects that you don't anticipate that aren't part of that design. And I think Vanilla WoW is a great example of that. Go log in. If you're like me and you played Vanilla back in the day, go over to Chronos, start an account, get the client, go log in and level up a bit. And like the other night, I hadn't played in like months, but I logged in because I couldn't sleep. And I was like, hey, does anybody need to do the Defias? The Defias, there's this escort quest here. You escort this like Defias trader into this area that's populated with these mobs that will like kill you very quickly. And I'm like, does anyone need to do this? And they're like, you know what? I don't need to do it, but I'll help you. I'm like, okay. Invite him to a group. Another person, you know what? I did the quest, but I'll help you. I need to get to this vendor in there. So we'll do that. And before you know it, you have a group and you're able to do the quest. Then they end up on your friends list. You end up on their friends list. They start talking to you, sending you whispers later. And before you know it, you've actually like created a social connection. You've created a friend through this mutual need. And then those friendships that are like the most compatible end up kind of sticking around. Sometimes years after the game has stopped being fun. Like I used to think that World of Warcraft, like I stopped playing World of Warcraft because I no longer was interested in World of Warcraft. And that's actually not the case. I stopped playing World of Warcraft after I've gone back and played Vanilla. Vanilla was a really good experience, going back and playing on Chronos because of all this stuff came back. I was like, oh, this is why I like this game. I stopped playing World of Warcraft because World of Warcraft stopped being fun. Not because I stopped liking World of Warcraft. The game changed in a way that made it not fun anymore. Made it a really lonely experience compared to the original. And it seems like a lot of people during this Nostalrius shutdown have been very, very sentimental about it. Extremely sentimental. So here's the Polygon article on it. And you can see how many people are there getting ready for the server to log out. This huge march of people to sort of show that how much they cared about the server. And we used to do this in-game stuff in World of Warcraft all the time, as cheesy and dumb as it sounds. But, it was a really good experience the entire time. And I would love to see it return. But in order for it to return, people really have to have a deeper understanding about how the features in a piece of software in a game, how those features that you think are there to make someone happy can have this negative impact on the compelling part of the game or a piece of art. If you're writing a story and you just keep resolving the conflict or you just have good things happen to the character, people might think like, oh man, I really wish that they hadn't killed Han Solo, for instance, in Star Wars. I can't believe they killed my childhood friend. I'm like, kill him. I don't care about him being killed as much as I care about a good story. The crappy part about Han Solo dying is the fact that he died in a crappy story, not because he died. If they had killed him and it had like an awesome impact, if it had been like, oh my gosh, that I saw that came out of the blue, or like, yes, he's having to do something that I really don't want him to do, but for reasons that are going to make the story better, for reasons I respect, rather than, oh, well, yeah, okay, he's going to get killed by his son, and then they did it. Right? Like, the objection to Han Solo dying is that they did it in a bad story, and for no reason, not that they did it. To me, if they had killed him, and it could have had a huge impact killing Han Solo, a much better impact if it had been done in a better story. I don't like characters to be safe. We don't want them to be safe because we want to feel like they've come through danger and survived. Similarly, that sentiment exists also in World of Warcraft, the conflict part. Because the conflict is you're going to get killed by the monsters. The conflict is you're going to get killed by another player. And that tension, that anxiety about looking over your shoulder, hoping that horde rogue doesn't show up and gank you. That's what makes the game compelling. It doesn't make the game, fun, right? Because fun is kind of this nebulous thing. It may not make you happy when you get ganked, but it makes the experience, makes you really want to get in and kill that person back. It makes you feel very compelled to continue playing the game. And it makes it very satisfying when you're successful, when you do something that's really hard, when you coordinate 40 people and actually kill a boss in Nax. Like, that's pretty cool. And that experience, those feelings don't really exist in the new version of the game. The feeling of it. And I think Blizzard has forgotten about that. They've forgotten how features really affect the total emergent parts of the game. It's almost like butterfly wings, but not quite. And Blizzard's always, it's always a difficult thing because you have to come out with new stuff for people to do or they get bored. And if the stuff too radically changes what you're doing, then people may get upset about that. So you're always walking this tightrope. But I think you didn't really need to add a lot of these features. And players ask for these features in a lot of cases, not really realizing, through complaints like, wow, why does it take so long for me to get a dungeon group? Wouldn't it be cool if we could just queue up for dungeons? It's like, that feature, no one really thought about how that might affect the game in total. And so, anyway, those are my thoughts on that. I'm sorry if that's a bit rambling, but it has a lot. There's a lot to talk about there, and I'm really sad to see Nostalrius go. There will be other private servers, but they suffer a tenuous existence. I feel like Blizzard could make money if they just opened a vanilla server, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. If they choose to open a vanilla server, they would earn my money. I would resub, right, so that I could play on that, or even a Burning Crusade server or a progression server. Like, every so often they're going to release another expansion. They did that with EverQuest, and it was immensely popular. I would love for them to do that, and I don't think it would cost them that much money. But for them to do that, they have to accept that they have not designed the features of the game in a way that has produced as high a quality a game as when the game came out from a design perspective. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's one that they really ought to swallow, because I see Legion coming around the corner and I have no interest in playing it. It just seems like more of the same crap. They're not going to... I was really interested in Warlords of Draenor because they pulled flying mounts out. Flying mounts were, in my opinion, a really bad feature of the game in total for design reasons, for the reasons that we talked about with needing to have tension and a feeling of accomplishment and danger and those sorts of things. So I loved that, but then the rest of the actual expansion just wasn't good. So I see Legion coming and I'm like, it's not going to be good. I don't really want to play. I would rather play a version of the game that I know to have a better impact. But anyway, we'll see. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know what you want to see and what you want to hear. I'm always appreciative of the feedback. And let's talk some more about intellectual property, if you will, and my idea about social enforcement of intellectual property, and some questions about how software, like old software, should be treated. I'm curious as to what you think is like an appropriate treatment for old software that can't be played according to its original license agreements. Like, you can't play vanilla WoW legally. Like, what do you do with that? What should be done with that? So anyway, leave me your thoughts, and have a great day.